That's like start a war kind of tea. Hi, this is Adrienne and Kelsey with Navajo Tea Time. Let's cheers. Okay, today's topic is
Homesite leases.
And why do we want to talk about this today?
For me, it marks an entire year of waiting for one survey that should have been done 6 to 8 weeks after I've submitted the paperwork.
And for me, I got a survey done. I put a lot of money into getting this home site lease pushed forward. I met with the families who were going to sign off on it, and then I heard back yesterday that the answer might be no. And I'm a little heartbroken because I had my heart set on this specific area because it's where my grandma built her home. So, yeah.
We could break it down to like what a home site lease is, what it means to have a home site lease, how is it different from just buying a house and having a deed. Off the reservation, off the Navajo reservation, you know, like when you're going to go buy a house, I wouldn't even know. I don't even know what you're supposed to look for when you're buying a house, because for people who don't know what a home site lease is, it's like homesteading. If anyone knows what homesteading is, where like you get a big plot of land and just build up from nothing. I know in cities and towns, you drive around neighborhoods. I'm like, oh, I like that house. It's already built. It's already connected to the grid line, has a sewer system. But a home site lease, you pick a spot of land and you're like, I want to live here. Then you have to contact your grazing official in that area for the district, get all the names of people who have grazing permits, get their approval and permission to build there, because you're taking away land that could be grazing property for them. And then you go get it mapped. Yeah, you get it mapped, and then you get the archaeological survey, make sure you're not building on someone's ancestral burial ground.
Yeah, there's like a whole process to it, and it's long and it's tedious, and there's like a whole packet with a long checklist that you have to go through. And anyone who lives on the Navajo Nation knows what a home site lease is. A lot of us have parents who tell us, once you turn 18, begin the paperwork.
You start the process because you're waiting forever. I started mine 3 years ago. I'm waiting on one specific thing before I can even turn in my application. So it's not even in the deciding whether I get approved phase yet. It's just waiting to turn it in. And it's the environmental wildlife survey, which is just basically making sure I'm not building on anything that destroys endangered plant life or wildlife. So I have no idea how long the application process is going to take, just because I haven't been able to turn in a completed application yet. So when I watch home improvement channels and they just like drive around the block, I'm like, oh, let's look at this dilapidated house. We could fix this up and you can live in it. And there's no options here like that. Like, once you have your home site lease and you build your house, that house is yours forever. You can't sell it. There's no need to make it look beautiful. There's no property value to try and uphold, because that house is yours until the end of time, and you can't sell it or rent it out or transfer it to anyone unless you go through the big process of transferring your home site lease to somebody else.
I mean, it's not even till the end of time anymore, too. I think it's like 60 years. So you have to renew it after that, you know.
Yeah, but 60 years is a really long time to own a house.
It is.
I don't think,
But everything you build on that plot of land, all the work and money you put into that home, if you don't renew it, then, you know, that house either goes to waste, it gets abandoned, or it's going to have to get transferred into somebody else's hands, and they manage it from that point on. But it's not really your property, so you can't sell it and use that money
to build
if you
up.
need it. You know, like if you need it, you can't pull out loans on it. You can't, you can't
do the mortgage thing.
It's not like an investment. You know what I mean? You can't use it as collateral. So it's annoying, but
Yeah, like owning a home on the reservation is not the same as owning a home off the reservation. You can't sell it for a bigger price value than what it was before. You can't, like put it up for collateral because the bank can't take it because it's
on federal land. So
yeah.
So there's that.
But then the bank can't take it.
That's another thing too. Yeah. So
it like. The home site leases aren't like, oh, we're going to build this up. This is our starter home, and then we're going to sell it and get a bigger home. It's like, no, you start this home, and then you just keep adding on. They're like...
Yeah, so you want to do it right the first time.
Frankenstein houses.
Right? Like, I want to do mine right the first time.
Yeah.
And so I know that I have to save up a lot of money. I know I have to be really smart about the build and who I choose to bring in to build it. I know I'm going to have to be really careful to get, quality items, hardware, whatever. So it's going to last a long time because you don't want to just throw something up and then have it start to deteriorate over in the first 10 years. Back to the big topic here.
Frankenstein homes. And you see them the old style, like maybe like the brick cinder blocks and then like it's kind of pieced together with plywood. I'm not a carpenter.
No, really. Some people
it's just plywood. They don't even have a siding. It's just straight up plywood. And it's just like attached here and there and doesn't even look good.
The floors are like different heights.
Oh, yeah.
And all the walls are different materials. The process is not nearly as simple as I thought it was going to be. So
yeah, like you look at the application process, and depending on where you live, usually you live near family members or people you've grown up with. And you're like, oh, yeah, sure, of course they'll let me live there. Why wouldn't they let me live there? And then sometimes things pop up, and you're like, I didn't know this was an issue. Why are you being so shady now? Like, so when I was saying this is where I want to live, like, oh, well, we have to make sure where you picked isn't going to disrupt our future plans that we might do someday, maybe in the future. And so that issue came up, and we're like, I didn't know you guys were doing this. You guys were being super secret about it. Why? I don't know. It's not like I'm going to steal your idea. I don't want to be a bed and breakfast hostess. But, sometimes those things happen.
What piece of advice would you give to someone who is, who has their home site lease packet in their hands and they're ready to embark on this journey?
Make sure you have the home site lease land office number on speed dial in your phone, because you're going to be calling them constantly. I am constantly calling the Tuba City office, but what everyone has told me is bug the office people, because they're going to get sick and tired of you calling. They're just going to get your application done. And I know sometimes it feels odd or disrespectful or rude or annoying, but if you want to start building your house from scratch, you need to get that paperwork started. And ask your chapter house for help or advice. Get your grazing official's number too, because you're going to need to contact whoever it is and talk to the people who own the permit, the grazing permit. Like my grazing official said, talk to the people nearest you, because they're probably the ones who are going to shoot your dog if it gets out.
Oh my God, that's crazy.
That's what he says. It's like,
that's crazy.
It's sad but true. They're the people you're going to be dealing with on a day-to-day basis. So just talk to them and get to know them and let them know you, and so you're not butting heads with anything at the beginning.
Yeah, I would say start saving up for it before you embark, because all of the surveys cost a lot of money and you pay those out of pocket. So I would put aside at least $1,000 for any kind of expenses related to surveys. And then I would also suggest that you have the specific area that you're interested in chosen, and then, like Kelsey said, find out who lives around that area, and take them for coffee, talk to them, get to know them, let them get to know you. That's what I did.
Yeah, saving up. I think me and my husband saved up a good year And there are certain programs in the chapter houses that, you know, you can file and try and get help and assistance with. So if you feel like you won't be able to meet those demands right away, but me and my family and my husband, we saved up. So I looked into it. I looked at the application, and the process for me was just taking so long. I'm like, I could save money, but I want it done now, so I'm going to pay for it now, out of pocket. But we've been waiting 3 years.
What's the tea?
What's the tea? Oh my goodness. I think.
Now, where do I begin?
What's the tea? This is my tea about the grazing permits. It's a lot of power for a dying profession.
Ooh.
Like, I don't know a lot of people in my community whose goal it is to be a sheep herder and raise sheep for the rest of their lives.
I mean, it depends on what you want to do. Like, if you are a professional weaver and you have your own flock and you can utilize their wool year-round for your rugs, it makes sense. If you're someone who sells sheep for slaughter, then you can make a profit off of that. But it's not really as lucrative as you would think, because there are limits to how big your flock can be and where they can roam. And so it's not like it's this big booming business, you know. So, and
it's just the way that people take care of their sheep. They don't you don't see big farm slaughterhouses like with cattle off the reservation. It's open grazing. I guess we call it open free range sheep.
Yeah, they're free range happy sheep.
They're free range sheep. And it's a lot of work just listening to my aunts and my grandmas talking about how much work they put into the sheep. But I feel like now it's just doing it for the sake of doing it now. It's like, because this is how it's always been done. This is the way we need to keep doing it. And it's a fear of letting go of a tradition that isn't working anymore. I feel like some people are thriving on it and it's what's built them up, but not everyone can have a permit and raise sheep. It's not plausible, and people need a place to live. And if we want the reservation to grow as a community, as an actual
like having
country,
infrastructure, we can build our communities. We can't all be living together in one house, because that causes a lot of problems too, you know. Like, they say traditionally that you should all have your own hearth, your own fire, you know. And every family should have that. That's what you aspire to. And if you don't have that, you know, there's a lot of conflicts that can occur. And, you know, I know what that's like. You know what that's like, because while you're waiting for your home site lease, sometimes you have to go back home and live with your family. And that's not the most ideal situation.
It's not the long-term goal.
Yeah, it's not the long-term goal. You want to be able to eventually move on and have your own house. So that's why it's a huge problem. And, you know, like, I don't want to be one to tear down sheep herders or, you know, all of that, but I know that, you know, times are changing, and that's not what everybody is setting out to do. So, like, times have definitely shifted from back in the day when we had these thriving economies based on our livestock.
There was there definitely was a time when us having a lot of sheep saved us as a tribe, as a nation, because looking in the history books, when the government gave us the sheep to live off of, other tribes just slaughtered them, consumed them almost instantly and needed more assistance. But the Navajos raised the flocks and made them really big, booming flocks, and were thriving off of it.
But even more than that, there's like this whole ideology in Navajo culture. You know, they say Debeh Be'ina, which is sheep is life. And the reason why they say that is because it sustains you. It gives you, there's teachings tied to it. There's discipline weaved into it. You know what I mean? There's trades that stem from it. And so it's bigger and deeper than what you could, you know, than just going out and herding them and feeding them. And, you know, the monotony of that, there's so much more to it, you know, beneath the surface. So, you know, we're in a neighborhood right now, and within this 1 acre lot, there's a corral in the corner, and there's about 20 sheep in there right now, you know. And so people who want to have sheep will have them. So my home site lease is kind of directly linked to this topic of sheep, only because, and grazing, of course, because my great grandma, she had huge flocks. She was one of those individuals that had an amazing lifestyle based on her ability to have these huge flocks. Like, I'm talking like thousands of sheep and cattle and horses and fields. So she knew how to do that. So she was very well known. She was very well off. But when she passed away, where she had her homestead and where she had her like corrals and flocks and fields, nobody really stayed there from the immediate family. So she had one surviving son who was my grandpa, and he moved away. That's the homestead that I want to build on. I want to go back. In that area, that's where my mother's siblings were born. There's a tree out there that still stands where my grandpa was born. And there's a tree where my aunts were born and my uncles. And so it's, to me, that's sacred. You know, that's important. That's where my roots are. And I want to go back there, and I want to build, and I want to take care of that land, and I want to feel that connection to my grandma, because every time I go back there, I can feel it. There's this pull. And when somebody who is not a part of our family, you know, says, no, you can't come here because, you know, because I have the power right now, and I have the power to say no, and so I'm going to use that power. It is frustrating, and that's what my contribution to this conversation about hot steaming tea is. You know, it makes me so mad. You know, I think it's really unfair. So we'll see where that goes. If the family sees this.
It's always a concern.
I'm pissed. I'm just kidding. We need to talk. I know. And for all the people that don't have a grazing permit, they know what
we're
that
talking
oppression
about.
Feels like.
Especially if you're in a chapter where the purpose of that chapter region is for grazing. Mm-hmm. Like Cameron, you know, the main purpose of that land that was given to the Navajo people was for them to graze the sheep, the cattle on that land. And so they hold a lot of power over people who don't have grazing permits.
You have to work with those people, and it can be really tough. And
anything that involves the land.
Yeah.
Specific.
You know, we need to have this conversation. It's important. And it's funny because, like, I know a lot of people are going through similar things. And, mm-hmm. you know, we have these struggles. And a lot of people who are our age, who are now in a position to buy their own home, who are starting their lives, they have small, young families. You know, we're kind of all in this together. And I feel like a lot of people are frustrated. And so that's kind of why we thought that we should have this conversation in this video. Like, this is one of those things.
Yeah, and it's like being a young family and wanting to branch out and live on our own in like a society that mocks millennials or people our age, mm-hmm. living with family. Mm-hmm. It's like, what are we supposed to do? Mm-hmm. And it puts us in a tough situation. Like, do we continue living this unsatisfying life? Mm-hmm. When we could move to Phoenix, we could move to Flag, we could move on the other side of the country.
Any border
we
town,
could move anywhere.
Anywhere.
Like me and her, we have college degrees. We could live anywhere and mm-hmm. thrive in any city. Mm-hmm. But we want to live here on mm-hmm. our reservation, on our homeland.
We want to be here.
It's
a choice.
Trying to build it up from the inside out. Mm-hmm. And it's frustrating when you bump into traditionalists and people who don't want to change, people who don't see the bigger picture. And then you get frustrated with paperwork that doesn't get done by a government that tried to slaughter your entire people almost 100 years ago. And that's just kind of how it feels. It's giving grazing permit holders all this power is just one of them, because if all this land is grazing land, then we can't build up. We can't build a proper sewer system. We can't build a trash recycling system. Like, I have to drive half an hour from my house on the highway to take my trash out. Like, we don't have a garbage pickup truck. And we have a leach field because there's no regular sewer system. And if where I want to build my house, I'm going to have to build all that from scratch. I'm going to have to dig into the bedrock, build a sewer system. I'm going to have to find a place to put a water tank where I'm going to have to haul water to my house for drinking and washing and anything else that you use water for.
We'll have to create and maintain
our own roads. And I'm deeply committed to solar and wind power because there's no economical reason to pay the APS company to build all those little power lines to take it to my house. And I hate power lines on the landscape.
We would have to pay for that, though. Like, every pole we would have to pay for. And so...
And the wires.
So it's not... That's the misconception, is people think that our lack of a home is due to our inability to either bring in the money we need, or we don't have the necessary intelligence to manage this whole system, or just like that we're lazy. That's just not true. Like, we're trying, we work every day to make sure that we can, meet the requirements, but it's just, it's big, it's big, it's expensive, it's time consuming, and it's very challenging. And so that's what we wanted to talk about and bring in. And so I think it would be cool if people could post their stories below. Let's have this conversation.
Your experiences, your frustrations. If you know that EPA phone number, leave it down below, and I will highlight the comment however I can, because I need that number. There's no animals out there. There's rattlesnakes and probably lizards, maybe gophers, but they're definitely not endangered. I assure you. Thanks for all the viewers from the last episode and your subscriptions.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for all the thumbs up.
Yeah, if you want to keep doing this. And it's fun talking about these things, because I feel like we have these conversations with our families kind of closed off and like, oh, well, this is what we've been doing. Well, this is what we've been doing. This is the frustrations I've been having. And maybe if we all talk about it openly, things can start to change and we can start seeing patterns and issues that we can all address together. Maybe someone else has that EPA number, and
that's my whole thing too. That's the reason why I want to do this.
Let's share knowledge. We're not in competition with each other. I don't want your home site lease or spot. You probably don't want mine. Let's build each other up and get these houses built, and then...
Yeah, like, I want to find solutions. And so if people have some of the answers to the questions that we're posing, or some strategies that we haven't thought of, and you post it down below, or you reach out to us, that would be awesome, because I feel like we really need to start, like, working together.
Yeah.
And right now, social media is a great way to do that. And so I think having these conversations is important, and also supporting Native entrepreneurs who are out there. They're the ones conducting these surveys, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we want to give them business too, and we want to work together so that they can thrive as well. So, my whole thing has always been like collaboration. That's why we're doing this, because we're believers in collaboration and finding solutions.
And I'm like always supportive of other people, like driving from Tuba to Cameron, and like you see these little houses pop up. I'm like, yay for them, good job, build your house. I don't care who you are. I'm happy you built your house. I'm happy you got your trailer or your house built.
Yeah.
I'm only at the beginning of my journey, and I feel the real, the celebration of when you finally get it done.
Yeah, and it's funny, like, I love watching HGTV too, and so, like, I think a really cool follow-up to this would be, like, when we get our home site leases, we can do, like, a house tour or something and be like, we did it, you know what I mean? Like, so, it's a house.
Come back 20 years later.
It's messed up.
It's true, it.
Oh my God, we'll be like old ladies, like, with our little canes.
It gets to that point, it's like, well, why are you naming all the old people houses? Because they're the ones finally getting their home site leases done.
Yeah.
A few more things. We're trying to get a Patreon put together. So if you have any ideas or suggestions of what perks you guys would like to see if you become a Patreon, please leave those below. Also, what topics do you want us to talk about? If we're not too familiar with a topic, we'll do research on it and get back to you on that.
Yeah, and we want to start having guests come in and join the conversation. So if you want to see that, let us know.
So this has been Navajo Tea Time.
Navajo Tea Time.